Please listen carefully.
Welcome back to the Extra Buttery podcast. This time on the show, we've got a couple of things lined up for you, starting off with some new discussion of Logan, which just opened this past weekend and is set to rake in quite a bit of money at the box office. Then we'll be moving on to a little bit of news regarding the absolutely gigantic budget for the double Avengers film that's on the horizon, followed by a little bit of discussion of the new trailer for Alien Covenant, the new Ridley Scott follow-up to Prometheus. And then a little bit of talk about Martin Scorsese's new picture, The Irishman, as it's currently known, and the deal that he's got himself lined up at Netflix. And then we'll close out the episode by talking a little bit about YouTube TV, which is an exciting new way to watch television that was just announced by YouTube a few days ago. And we want to talk a little bit about what it might mean for the streaming market and just television and cord cutters in general. And coming to you from Toronto, my name is Robert Snow, and I'm joined by my co-host in Vancouver, Jason Chen. Hey, Jason, how's it going?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing okay. But I think both of us saw Logan over the weekend, so that's where we were. That's where we were going to start. So I want to start with your take because I know you saw it. I think maybe a day before I did, and you were already singing its praises when I got a chance to see it the next day.
Yeah, so I was always very wary of the hype coming into the movie. I saw it Saturday night in a packed theater, so that I always find helps. I guess make the experience that much more poignant or exaggerated, and I really, really liked it. I walked out of the theater and I was trying to kind of nitpick, as I always do, but I couldn't really find anything to nitpick. It was exactly what I had envisioned Logan to be, and it delivered on everything. And I thought, not knowing much about the movie going into it really helped my viewing experience. So maybe I'll try doing that a lot more often, because I do find sometimes I do spoil things way too much for myself. What about you? Was there like a particular part you liked?
I think one of my favorites was the climactic battle in the forest, right on the. I guess they were fighting in the near the border with Canada. I guess we're our lovely country is being pitched as the safe haven for mutants in that movie.
Yeah, it's always like that. The North is always safer for whatever reason.
Yeah, so like go us. But no, I mean on the whole, I really enjoyed the movie. I totally agree with what a few other critics were saying in the sense that it's first and foremost it works as a movie setting aside any of the superhero trappings. You know, it's a Western. It's a Western. It goes deep into his character. If there were no sharp claws or fancy powers or any of that, it would still work. And I think that's something that not enough superhero movies do. Something that I think was still missing from Deadpool. I mean, even though Deadpool is a very different kind of movie, I think I wanted a little bit more of that in it. Even just with the secondary characters.
I think with this movie though, that even though there was a lot of hesitation on Fox to release an R-rated superhero movie, even though they did Deadpool, I think this was a movie that really justified its R rating. Like, you never want to make an R-rated movie just because it's just for the rating. Like, people are obviously turned on by violence and sex and nudity and whatnot, but it would have been really hard to, I think, make this film without the R rating. About like every half hour or so, Wolverine's kind of chopping everybody up, and there are a lot of dismembered body parts to remind you of that. Yeah, so I think people get caught up in the R rating, but there has to be a good reason for it, right? Like, you can't make a movie just for the sake of being super violent or super sexual. It doesn't work that way. Like, it has to bleed from the characters and the plot itself.
Yeah, and I think one thing about this movie is they make it clear pretty early on that the world that we're stepping into, it isn't the kind of poppy, colorful X-Men world that we might remember from earlier films in the franchise. You know, almost all of the characters that we're familiar with have died. the movie that has a bit of a responsibility to be honest about that and kind of say like, this isn't a kid-friendly world anymore. It's not something where people are writing comic books about these characters. Like, people are out to kill them, and when they kill them, they actually kill them. There's no kind of Superman-style plot workaround to bring them back to life or something like that.
And kind of like the Harry Potter books, we grew up along with Wolverine. Like, when Wolverine first came out, we were both like early teens, maybe a little before that. So we've obviously gone through the same progression as Hugh Jackman or his character, and it's kind of interesting to see how we've matured the same way. Like, if we go back and watch maybe even X-Men 2, which was very good, somehow it doesn't hit the same notes as Logan for us. I think personally, I think Logan was just a much more mature movie in that respect. I'm very, very stingy about giving perfect scores to movies. Mm-hmm. And this is the one time where I kind of thought it was maybe a 3.5 out of 4, but I ended up giving the full 4 stars because I literally enjoyed every minute of it. I think it's an early release, but I feel like come awards time, this film is going to pick up some discussion. I don't know if it's going to pick up any nominations, but it's definitely going to be talked about, because I think it's probably already one of the best films of the year, right?
I don't know how far it'll go in the awards race, to be honest. I mean,
we've got a lot of good stuff coming out.
Yeah, maybe it'll end up in a kind of a cool Mad Max Fury Road kind of position where, even though it's very much a genre film, some of the folks in the industry will try to shine a light on it.
But I thought the directing was great, the action was great, the acting was good. It was really hard for me to find one particular fault in it.
Yeah, I think the only thing that popped out for me, and maybe this would fix itself on a second or third viewing, is just the length of the movie. There were a few scenes where I felt maybe they could have trimmed it back a little bit, get it down closer to 2 hours rather than 2 hours 15. But even then, like, the scenes that were in there that you might pull out, you could make an equal argument for them staying in. So it didn't bother me a whole lot. James
Mangold's films tend to feel very long, though, even though it's not. It's like 2 hours and 15 minutes or something, right?
Yeah.
But it feels like a 3-hour movie, and it also feels like if they cut anything out, it definitely wouldn't have been the same. We needed everything.
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's no plot in there that I would remove, I think. And maybe too, it's just a question of adjusting to, we expect superhero movies to have a certain pace or rhythm, and this is very much a totally different experience. So there could just be maybe I just need to adjust a little bit and be like, oh, hey, wait, no, a movie with like mutants and superheroes and all of that can feel like this, can feel like a Western, and have those drawn out moments, those kind of almost Sergio Leone kind of moments.
There's a lot of talk about how this film opens up a new avenue for the X-Men universe. You can make a lot of darker, more violent, and more hyper-focused character dramas. Do you think they'll actually do that?
Oh, are you thinking of like the younger characters that are introduced with Laura, or otherwise known as X-23?
Well, it doesn't even matter. Like, you could do a movie about any of the X-Men characters, but in the same kind of tone and style, where the focus is just on a few characters rather than the entire team. Do you think they'll actually go through with that?
That's hard to say, because I think audiences have always expected that Logan as a character could be taken in that direction, but and I'm not.
He's very popular,
and I'm not familiar. Like, and people kind of feel like, oh yeah, I mean, he's really there's a part of his nature that's a complete savage. So you can take a movie in that direction and it won't feel off. But I mean, I'm not familiar enough with some of the character arcs for people like Cyclops or Jean Grey. I know Jean Grey has the whole Phoenix thing where she goes pretty much insane. So maybe that would be a candidate. But those characters, again, are still more in that kind of very colorful comic booky realm. I don't know if audiences would.
Only because we're associated with that comic book, though. I think X-Men, more so than any other comic, maybe except Batman, has a very social commentary slant to it, because it's about people and their identities and being cast away by society for whatever reason. right? So there's a lot of, I think, social issues, really heavy social issues that can be fleshed out in the X-Men universe that probably wouldn't work as well in the Avengers.
Yep.
And I feel like Fox or X-Men really have something here that they can go on. I am kind of in agreement that there are very few characters you can take in that direction. But I mean, the comic book world is immense, right? Look how Marvel made like tier B, tier C superheroes become household names. So I think there's a lot of material that they can work with here.
Yeah, and one show that I'm really interested in checking out is Legion on FX, partly due to the what seems like almost universal critical acclaim for the show, and people are saying that it's doing incredible things with its visuals and with its structure, all constantly making you question whether what you're seeing on screen is even real.
Because in the X-Men universe, it's very hard to tell who is good and who is bad. Like Xavier and Magneto are on opposite sides of the equation, but there are times where neither of them are good or bad. There's a sort of mutual goal, but different philosophies that kind of clash.
Yeah, and it all gets back to what was pretty familiar to us now in 2017 as a very divisive politics. Like at the end of the day, they're talking about the same thing, like how to coexist in a society, and one branch of thought in their world is very reactionary and protectionist, and the other branch is inclusive and trying to forge common bonds with humans.
Like on a final point about Logan, I think we really need to move in a different direction for superhero films because it's starting to get really stale.
Yeah. Oh, and well, I mean, just look at both major universes like X-Men and Marvel right now, or even DC. Actually, you could toss them in there as well. I think the age of these big tentpole movies where you have massive planet-ending cataclysms as the main set pieces, people just aren't. It doesn't make their hearts flutter anymore, you know?
No, it's too much good guy versus bad guy dynamics. It's boring.
You know, it's no longer shocking when you have some sort of super powerful mutant rip up all of Cairo and turn it into a massive jeweled pyramid thing. You know, it just, you're like, oh, well,
yeah,
whatever. I've seen that in 2 or 3 other movies just this year.
But speaking of superhero films and big budgets, Avengers just recently was reported to have a $1 billion with a B dollar budget.
Yeah.
Which absolutely blows my mind. I mean, when you get to that point, you could make money, but it's gonna, I mean, I can't imagine what it's gonna do worldwide.
Let's assume for a second that we split it evenly, like 500 between the two films, and that those numbers include the marketing budget, which I would really hope they do, because if it's 500 if it's 500 million each for just production and not marketing, then that has to be some sort of record that will it's a record that will stand for a very long time, I think.
Yeah, like how much money do they really think they can make off this
because
stuff,
the common metric in Hollywood is that you have to make at least double what you spent for it to be considered a success. And I don't imagine they're expecting a larger percentage of people to turn out for these two than did for the other ones. It's not, I don't think there's too many new audiences to develop other than some new foreign markets that they haven't expanded into.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, some people will just pay to just go see the spectacle of it, even if they're not really invested in the MCU. So, I mean, it's going to make $1 billion either way. I just can't believe it's actually going to cost $1 billion to make, too. It just blows my mind. Like, I can't get over this.
Yeah, I mean, what are they spending the money on other than RDJ's salary? Like, are we talking, like, they must be putting, like, 2,000 visual artists to work on these things or something.
Probably more than that. I mean, if you think about all the characters are going to be in it. Captain America, Thor, Hulk, the Guardians of the Galaxy, Thanos. I mean, and is Brie Larson going to be there? I'm sure she'll be there in some shape or form.
Yeah. I mean, when they're going to have time to introduce her, I have no idea.
Yeah. I think at one point they had like over, 200, couple hundred superheroes and speaking roles in the film. I mean, that's a gigantic production. I almost feel like it's too big.
Yeah, I have no idea how they're going to keep it straight. Well, I mean, even Civil War was pushing things.
Yeah, and I felt Civil War was kind of bloated and overstuffed and overly long. So I hope this doesn't fall into the same trap.
Naturally, we'll have to wait until they're a little bit further into production. I mean, they're shooting right now, as far as I know. Hopefully, the first trailer, whenever it hits, will go a certain distance to explaining how they're going to keep all this straight.
Yeah, and speaking of trailers, the new Alien Covenant trailer dropped.
It did, yeah. And I mean, I can't call myself a gigantic fan of the new or continuing Alien franchise, especially since Prometheus.
What's wrong with you, Rob?
I think it's because like I haven't watched enough of the old ones from the 70s and 80s, but
But you've seen it though.
Which one?
Well, only the first two are really matter.
No,
you've never seen the first two.
No.
Oh my God, Rob. Oh my God.
Listen, there's very few movies left from like big banner movies from that era that I haven't seen. But it is a bit of a black mark on my record, so I'll admit to
it. It's not a black mark.
Whatever. But I think I've picked up enough from just general exposure to pop culture to at least get a lot of the references. Like I wasn't completely lost when I went to see. I think you and I saw Prometheus when it came out in.
We did.
When was that? 2012. So I mean, I got enough of the references, and this one is, I guess, the problem I had with the trailer or even the short film that they had released a few days before was that structurally it still feels very similar to Prometheus. Like you got a lot of people, like recognizable actors, landing on some sort of barren planet, and then they're pretty much idiots. They step on something or they open something up and then all hell breaks loose and they release an alien. It feels very, very samey to me compared to Prometheus.
Well, I mean, let's not forget that this is basically the fourth sequel or fifth sequel in the series. And so there are only a certain number of things that you can do before it gets really stale. I'll have to wait and see to figure out whether I like it or not. But I wish I had known that you didn't see the two aliens before going to see Prometheus, because I think it really changes how you view Prometheus.
Maybe, but I mean, I still feel that some of the decisions that Scott made in Prometheus still didn't make a lot of sense. Like the character motivations just weren't there, whether you saw the original film or not.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I think Prometheus is a very flawed film, but in terms of the tone and like the mythos of that whole alien universe, I think there's a lot more that you can glean from Prometheus if you had seen the first two. Because even the first two movies are very, very different. The first movie is like a sci-fi thriller, and the second one's just a straight up balls to the wall kind of action type film. They're quite different, but they inhabit the same universe. So like the fact that Alien Covenant has the same sort of feel and look to it, I think is a good thing. Whether or not it's a good film remains to be seen, right? When you have a guy like Danny McBride, or you have comedians taking on dramatic roles, I usually tend to find that the result is pretty good. Just based on the trailer, there's equal parts action and equal parts thriller, although it seems a bit more horror thriller-ish. So that's kind of more like the first film. And hopefully that's the case, because the first film was genuinely terrifying. I've only seen it like once or twice. I saw it once when I was a kid and I was traumatized. And I saw it again as a teenager and it was awesome. But again, quite traumatizing.
But do you think it's potentially a bit of a, and again, all we're going on here is the trailer, so take that how you will. But do you think there's a possible pitfall ahead if they're showing so much of the xenomorph in the trailer and ostensibly in the film as a whole? Because it wasn't the whole thrill of the first film the fact that you don't see very much of the xenomorph and it's all left to your imagination?
Yeah, kind of like Jaws in that sense, where the horror is beneath the surface and you don't actually know what's going on. But I mean, at this point, how long has it been since Aliens? Like 30 years? 40 years?
Almost 40, yeah.
Yeah, so everyone already kind of knows what a xenomorph looks like and acts like. I think the more intriguing portion of the movie is how it ties into the whole timeline and how exactly it's going to be different from the other Alien films. Because Prometheus had some things that had going for it, but a lot of other things just didn't make any sense.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciated the world building in Prometheus. The most annoying part that still sticks with me today is the motivation behind the Michael Fassbender android character, David.
And he's back!
He's back in this one, or is he just a copy, or is he like a duplicate David?
Well, either way, he should be playing the same character, right? Even if he's a duplicate, because he's an android who thinks he's better than everyone else.
Right. Oh, yeah, I suppose. But there's still one thing that annoys me is, like, who programmed David to be the guy who unleashes everything, who decides that he's going to poison the guy's drink in Prometheus, drop the thing in there so that he becomes infected, and then he impregnates the Numi Rapace character with the alien baby, and and the plot goes from there. Like, I missed a connection there, I think, because I didn't understand David's plan.
Wasn't the whole point about David, though, the fact that he felt the human race was inferior? Wasn't that the whole point? Like, he felt, as the engineers did, that the humans were headed for a very, not a bad fate, but something destructive. And so he felt that, I can't remember the exact details, but I do think David kind of goes rogue because he was created by the Guy Pearce character.
Oh, okay.
And so there's this whole like artificial learning, sentient being sort of dynamic going on there. But again, like that movie had so many moving parts going around that it was kind of difficult to make sense of all of it. I agree. I think Alien Covenant, if anything, will at least be very visually pleasing.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, the trailer was very pretty.
Yeah, Ridley Scott made a huge comeback with The Martian, right? So he's had a few hits and misses in the past couple years. So it'll be interesting to see how well he handles this one. But I am excited. I'm going to go see it.
Oh, yeah. I'll probably end up seeing it too. Do we know when it's coming out? Is it a summer release?
It's a summer release, yeah.
Okay. But let's transition over into the other little bit of news we wanted to talk about, which was Martin Scorsese has set himself up with a new distributor for his next film. But instead of one of the big studios who he's always had a relationship with, most recently Paramount, he's going with Netflix this time.
Woo, Netflix.
Yeah, good for Netflix. This is probably one of their more prestige deals in the past few years. I mean, granted, they've been knocking it out of the park in many fronts, both with their TV shows and with their movie distribution deals. But to get a director like Scorsese to say like he's going to release his movie with them first, that's a pretty big deal. And the fact that Netflix is willing to give him what's apparently $125 million to make this movie.
Yeah, so this is an instance of where Netflix being really ahead of the game really helped them, because even though a lot of other studios, or companies I should say, are starting their own streaming and TV service, Netflix was first, so they already have a built-in audience, they have a lot of money to burn. And for Scorsese, his films generally don't make a lot of money. I think his financially most successful film was The Departed, and that didn't make that much money. Like, it wasn't a huge blockbuster. It surpassed 100 million, but and for Paramount, I think for them, they've just lost too much money. And Scorsese, as much as they would have loved to fund him, just couldn't see a good financial reason to back this film, which, by the way, stars Robert De Niro and Al Pacino.
If I were Paramount, I probably would have made a similar decision. And I don't even think, based on what I've heard from the production of Scorsese's most recent film, Silence, I don't know that Paramount actually kicked in a lot of money to get the movie made. I think they were more involved as a distributor this time. Because
wasn't Silence a pretty low budget film too?
Well, I mean, I think it was low budget by they basically were scrambled together as much money as they could, because his producer, she appeared on one of the THR roundtables in the run up to the Oscars, and she talked about how she basically had to string together money from a whole bunch of different financiers. In the way that, Scorsese has done in the past. But this one was particularly tight because she knew that she had very limited funds to work with, but yet they were shooting in really remote areas, like hours away from civilization. And it made the shoot for Silence that much harder. So I think the fact that they were able to kind of part ways, probably fairly amicably, with Paramount and say, like, all right, maybe the old school way of funding these movies doesn't work. Let's try a new partner like Netflix, who has the money to give us right from square one, and then has a completely different way of distributing the movies.
Yeah. So as of February 23rd, 2017, Silence only grossed 7.1 million worldwide because I don't think it had a foreign release.
If it has, it was like maybe just the UK and some other English speaking countries.
This could be. I'm excited for Netflix because I think this is the start of something really, really new for them. I mean, Amazon Studios stepped up their game because what they were the production crew behind or studio behind Manchester by the Sea.
Yeah, well, they bought it for was what I think was a record sum at Sundance this past year.
As far as the movie goes, though, are you kind of hesitant? Do you have high hopes?
It's definitely familiar ground for Scorsese. I mean, he's definitely proved
For all three of them, yeah.
I mean, he's proved time and time again that this is the kind of material that he does well with, and it's a story that I don't think has been done before. I think it's about a mob hitman in Boston. I think the last time that Pacino and De Niro teamed up on screen, well, I think they've done two since Heat. And neither one had particularly great scripts or directors, so they kind of fizzled out. So I think they're due a screen meetup that gives them a bit of a challenge. And both Pacino and De Niro really also deserve a film where they can be challenged. I think they've been coasting a lot in a lot of the stuff they've been doing the past few years. It's exciting on all those fronts.
The only thing kind of my sort of hesitation with this movie is that I don't know if Al Pacino and Robert De Niro can play the kind of action hero in gangster films anymore. Like, to me, they have to play their age. So they have to play gangsters who are on the downside of the career or have already left their past behind them. Those type of characters. Like, they can't be running around killing people and all that kind of stuff because it would feel and look really odd for them to do that. Because, I mean, how old are they? Like, De Niro's like 70 something, isn't he?
I think they're both in their 70s now, and there's only so much that makeup and who knows, maybe some of that 125 million is going towards some expensive digital youth procedures. I
just really can't see Pacino and De Niro having another shootout like they did in Heat in this film because it just wouldn't make any sense.
So maybe Scorsese will go in a bit of a Godfather Part 2 direction where he'll have flashback. Maybe he'll have like flashback scenes with younger lookalike actors or something like that.
Yeah, maybe. I'm interested though. Like, when's the release date? It's a couple years away too, though, isn't it? 2019, I think.
Yeah, I think they're Scorsese likes to take some time between his movies, so we could be talking still a couple of years on. But the really interesting thing about the story was just the Netflix side of it and how much money they were looking to put into it. Netflix also, they put $90 million into that Will Smith cop movie directed by David Ayer that has like orcs in it.
I have not heard about this.
I don't know if you saw the trailer for it, but there's so many elements in that don't make sense together. David Ayer, Will Smith, cops, orcs, $90 million, Netflix. Try to connect those dots. It literally, like, Will Smith plays a cop in some sort of weird fantasy side universe where there's like orcs and fairies and things that are also on the police force, and they're like, it's supposed to be some allegory for race.
It sounds like such a Will Smith movie now.
Yeah, I really don't know, but it's coming to Netflix, so we'll all get to see it and react accordingly.
Yeah, and seeing how Netflix has stepped up their game, the biggest news recently is that YouTube is stepping up their game with YouTube TV, which, from what I gather, is an app, an online streaming service, and you pay $35 a month, and you basically get all the major broadcasters and all the major sports channels. So this is a huge game changer because for a lot of people that haven't cut their cord yet, like me, we only have cable because of live sports.
Granted, this is only being brought out right now for the American market, but we know that YouTube will almost definitely try to put something together for other markets, and Canada is usually one of the first ones that follows the US for these sorts of things. $35 US, it'll probably, if it was ever brought to Canada, it would probably be a little bit more expensive, probably more around the lines of like $40 or $45 Canadian.
Which is still a fair service or a fair price to pay if you're getting all that content.
Yeah, if you're getting all that content and you're getting the convenience of the cloud DVR and the choosing what you want to watch when you want to watch it, which is still something that you can technically do with current cable packages if you set things up correctly with your DVR box and you program it correctly. But if the YouTube TV has more of a Netflix style arrangement where things are just waiting for you to click on them, that could really mix things up a little bit.
Yeah, so YouTube, I believe YouTube is owned by Google, right? So Google has endless resources. So from what I know is that space is unlimited. So you can DVR as much as you want. The catch is that your DVR gets wiped every 9 months. So you can't keep things forever. You can keep a lot of things, but you can't keep it forever. So in that sense, I think it's similar to Netflix, where it's on for a while and then it kind of goes away. The big thing for me, though, is do you think that because YouTube TV includes ABC, NBC, and all these news channels, do you think people will consume news differently? Do you think the era of primetime news at 6 or 7 p.m. or whatever it is gone?
Yeah, I think this announcement has so many implications on so many different levels. And
yeah, it's crazy.
I think we could be talking about it for a long time. One of the people I first found out about it from was a YouTuber that I've been following for a number of years, Philip DeFranco. And he was coming at it from the perspective of not only what it means for cord cutters, but also what it means for YouTube creators. And for guys like him who film out episodes of their shows that are reacting to news that's collected by mainstream news sources, if he's able to put together his own news network or news show that's consumed in the same way that you watch YouTube videos, then you have whole new entrants into the market alongside all of the established brands from ABC or CNN or whoever else is there from the mainstream networks. So there's not only do you have these little guys who are nipping at the heels, but you've got the big guys who are trying to stay relevant. So just in the news market, things are totally being shaken up.
I have a question for you, Rob. So, Rob, you work in media. Like your day-to-day life involves cutting and editing and shooting video. I've always wondered why a lot of existing news stations never leveraged YouTube as a platform. So you hear about Toronto Star, you hear about NBC, ABC, putting all sorts of money developing their own apps, arguing about user interfaces, about how to monetize these things, when really they've always had the platform right in front of them. It's just they never used it. I always wish I could go on YouTube and watch the nightly news broadcasts off YouTube whenever I want, but it has never been the case for me. My question is, why was it never a solution for these guys to put their videos on YouTube, generate hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of views, and make money that way?
Well, yeah, I would say that's pretty kind of complicated because we can't really see the financials of some of these news organizations. But I know that just based on what I know from watching various YouTube creators over the years, like guys who have built up their businesses as creators from scratch, the business of getting paid for just producing something via YouTube is very complicated. It started out that creators got a bigger share of the ad revenue from their videos, and some of them were actually able to have very lucrative careers just based on the ad placement that Google was implementing within YouTube. But then YouTube started to claw back a little bit of that, so it wasn't as economically feasible for these guys to rely just on the built-in ads. They had to start doing sponsorships where they actually name drop products during the video itself, which are essentially sponsorships that can't be skipped, compared to the built-in advertising. And other times,
the thing is, though, I always thought this was another source of revenue that they could have had. So you have your continuing broadcast on TV, and then you upload the newscast when it's done or certain clips onto YouTube and make a little extra money that way. Rather than, downloading an app, going into their search engine, typing in whatever specific story you want that may or may not be there because their archives are crap.
Yeah.
So I think it was always there. It really bugs me that the Toronto Star poured in, 20 million or something of their own money to develop an app.
Oh, you're thinking of Star Touch?
Yeah, Star Touch, because it always bothered me because I always thought that money could have been used elsewhere. And if you put all that money into an app that really has no guarantee is going to be successful, I think you're just wasting money. Granted, they probably didn't think it was going to be that big of a flop.
I mean, that thing is that particular case is confusing on a number of levels, because not only did they do what you just said, but they also said to themselves, "Hey, let's develop an app that can only be viewed on tablets."
And tablets are dying. Like, who cares about tablets anymore?
Like, let's not make even like a product that is like responsibly designed so that it adjusts to screen size. You know, it detects whether you're looking at it on a tablet or a smartphone and you know, recalibrates. They were like, no, it's locked to tablets, so people with smartphones can't get at it. I mean, I've never I don't think I've heard a strategy so short-sighted in a long time. That is, it's so ignorant of the way people use their devices. But that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah, that's true. Let's not get into it, because I could go on and on about how stupid it is.
Yeah,
and how behind the curve they actually are.
But the whole idea of advertising on YouTube is a very interesting one. It's how they're going to implement it on YouTube TV is another whole question, because, and I think actually Philip DeFranco pointed this out in one of his stories about the announcement, are when you see ads on YouTube TV, and we know that there's going to be ads, it's not going to be like Netflix where they're just going to get by on subscriptions. Are the ads going to be ones that YouTube controls, or will you be essentially watching the same ads that you would if you had a cable box and were just queuing up the particular channel normally? And if that's the case, like how would Google or YouTube negotiate that share of the ad revenue? You know, there's so many like different layers to how the money is going to move for this particular product, and I think that will eventually carry over to whether or not it ends up in other markets as well, because who knows how the different regulations, like bodies like the CRTC here in Canada, are going to react to all of these different things that need to be worked out.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why it hasn't launched in Canada is because of CRTC and the different regulations we have. But when it comes to advertising, I feel like this is where Google can flex its muscles a lot more than other networks, because they have a lot of their revenue comes from online advertising, right? And they have automated targeted advertising where they log and track what kind of sites and things you buy online, and then have targeted ads specifically for you, which is different than on TV where you're force-fed an ad and you can't fast forward something that doesn't interest you. I think there's a lot of potential for YouTube TV to make a lot of money, more so than Netflix, because I think with Netflix, if you're only counting on subscriptions, you're kind of capped. So with YouTube TV, even if it's just 5, 10, 15, even 20-second ads, I think there's a lot of potential for revenue. And again, keep in mind that they're not subject to the usual time slot sort of structure that we have on TV, right? So things can go for as long as they want, or as short as they want, and be structured in ways that they think would be the best for their audience.
I'm curious too about how the content licensing is going to work on the Canadian side, because as we know, there's very different rules about how, you know, what titles are available to see in which countries, which, side note, doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know why they can't figure out global rights for these things.
Yeah, it's archaic.
Yeah, totally. It's probably based on a very old way of doing business. I have a feeling like it might delay the Canadian service quite a bit, which in turn will probably encourage more people to try out VPNs or other types of tech that will try to get them around the country lock and get at the service no matter where they are in the world.
And let's not forget that the CRTC is basically at the mercy of the 3 big telecom companies in Canada.
Yeah, because, I mean, just look what they're doing with the HBO Netflix competitor, HBO Now. I mean,
and even before that, the Super Bowl ads thing was a huge headache.
I think with the case of the HBO product, Bell is actively paying HBO to not release that product in Canada, because they know that the second that streaming service is available in Canada, Bell will lose all sorts of customers who are basically, a lot of them are only buying add-on cable packages so they can access HBO.
Yeah, exactly. And how fair is that for us as consumers, right? It's not fair at all.
I would think that it's incumbent on a body like the CRTC to intervene in something like that, because it's so anti-competitive.
But even if they have good intentions and they intervene, I'm not sure they have enough muscle to actually force the telecoms to actually cooperate. I think it's the other way around most times.
I mean, yeah, I feel like the telecoms do win out quite often. Although there was a cool thing that happened with between the telecoms and the CRTC just in the past few months. The CRTC was actually able to bring down the price of wholesale internet access against all of the major telecom companies, which didn't affect the direct customers of those telecom companies, but it did affect people like me who buy their internet access from wholesale companies like TechSavvy, which operates here in Ontario. TechSavvy buys their access to the internet from Bell or Rogers, whoever's operating in the neighborhood where their customer lives, and then they sell it back to you at prices that are quite a bit less than what you'd expect to pay for similar services from the major telecom companies. So CRTC was actually able to drop the wholesale price, which made customers like me, we actually saw drops of a couple of dollars on our monthly bills as a result, which is kind of pretty cool. Like it's a kind of minor footnote in the larger conversation about the role of the CRTC.
Yeah, we're still overpaying, especially our cell phone plans.
Oh yeah, cell phone plans. Don't get me started. When I was in Paris over the summer in 2016, I was able to get a SIM card to just pop into my phone that got me 50 gigabytes for a week for the equivalent of like $30 Canadian.
Yeah, I was going to say it was probably like 20 euros or something, right?
Yeah, it was crazy.
It's ridiculous. It's like that in Asia too. There's so much competition. You get unlimited data basically on every single plan, and it's half the price of what we pay here. Like at least half the price.
Yeah, but this whole YouTube TV thing is something I'm going to be watching very closely. Yeah, I really hope it changes things up here. And
yeah, I don't use that term lightly, but it's a game changer.
Yeah, for sure. Because who knows? We maybe give it a couple of years, and we'll be finally closer to that kind of, I think, what TV viewers have wanted for a very long time, which is that pick and pay kind of structure where you only pay for what you're going to use, and it'll probably hurt the telecom companies on the face of it, but who knows? They could stand to make just as much money if they're able to revitalize their business practices.
Well, if the telecom companies are smart, they'd partner up with them, right? Figure out a way to work together. There's no way like a Bell or a Rogers or whoever can compete with a company like Google. If Google really flexes its financial muscle and all the IT and tech that they do, telecoms would be out of business so fast.
Because people want that flexibility. They're willing to pay for things like VPNs or special devices that plug into their home theater equipment that allow them to get around the rules and the regulations that are being put in place, not by the government, but by the content owners. People just don't, people that don't have patience for that anymore.
Yeah,
it's a kind of a cool time to be watching the industry.
It is. It's unfortunate that our attention spans are so tiny now. We're constantly just kind of like a hungry dog, just like salivating whatever image that moves.
Do you feel like it's harder and harder to have conversations with like friends or colleagues about watching the same stuff because everyone's got a completely different watching schedule or is following completely different shows? I'd
say that's a good thing though, that there's enough content for everyone, that there's something out there for everyone.
I wouldn't say anything against it, but sometimes it does mean that like you'll get into a conversation and be like, have you seen that show? No, I haven't seen that show. But have you seen this show? No, I haven't seen that show.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes the conversations get a little bit circular.
Yeah, it's true. All right, that's true. But I mean, there are other things to talk about, Rob, other than movies.
What? Blasphemy.
I don't know if you know about that, but there are other stuff that we could talk about.
Well, this particular episode has already gone off in all kinds of cool directions. We're talking about the future of broadcast regulation in this country, all kinds of things.
Yeah, and our consumption of news. I mean, you got YouTube TV, you got fake news, you got all sorts of blogs and journals and all sorts of weird, crazy characters popping up in the Silicon Valley world. Like, oh my God, I feel like we are in the midst of like a huge paradigm shift. To where or how, I have no idea, but there's a tremendous amount of change, and the old man in me is kind of grumpy about this entire thing.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I mean, there's
I wish I could turn my brain off and not think about it. It's a part of day-to-day life now for us, right? Looking at our phones every day, every minute is just what we do now.
Yeah, but I think that about does it for this episode. We've covered a lot of ground. I think in the next episode, you'll want to stay tuned because we may very well be welcoming our first special guest onto the podcast.
Woo!
She's someone that Jason and I know very well from our days in journalism school, and she's already got a plan for what she wants to talk about. A little bit of a hint, it might involve Quentin Tarantino.
A little bit of a hint.
But we'll let you guys look forward to that. And until then, my name is Robert Snow in Toronto.
And my name is Jason Chen in Vancouver. Be sure to check out kinetoscope.ca for our latest film and TV articles, including my review of Logan. And we'll talk to you next time.